Oh, beautiful light-filled souls, before my giant puppy gets too big. He's a giant schnauzer and standard poodle mix. I thought I would show him to you. Look at this lovely face. He's a little bit under the weather right now, but he is such a lover, such a sweet, sweet dog, and one of the best gifts I've ever received. So the love of animals is a deep love, and I'm going to be talking with Jenny Jablonski, who's an animal communicator at the summit on July 23rd, 24th, and 25th. So please bring your questions about that. My own connection to animals, I think, is deepening. These puppies are so vulnerable, and so they are often in my dreams and in my thoughts. And I know when they're going to get sick ahead of time, and I feel them, beginning to connect to my consciousness. So there is this way to connect to our animals that's quite deep. It's also interesting. They're siblings, and so these two puppies communicate, and I can see them like conspiring, almost like the way twins do. They have this ability to telepathically talk to one another, and they're both boys, so they're often conspiring about how to tear up things or find some sticks or get into trouble. But it's kind of cute. I want to talk this afternoon with Ingrid Honkala live. So if you're around, I'm going to try to post this video so you can tune in at 7:40 Central today. But if you missed it, I'll keep it up for a few days. And if you missed it completely, you can tune in to the summit and you can purchase all of the pre-recorded videos. Dr. Ingrid Honkala is one of them, and she just has such beautiful wisdom. We're going to talk about the light beings and the wisdom that they bring in, as well as other topics like she worked as a scientist for many years, and I find that fascinating. So the conflict and the marriage of science and spirituality is an interesting topic. So another person who I recently interviewed and added to the pre-recorded section is Brooke Grove. And if you don't follow her on Instagram, I think it's a private account, and you're into this type of writing, you ought to follow her. I just think she's a beautiful writer. And I'm going to take some ideas from a recent post of hers that resonate with things I've been talking about and unpack a few of them. So she's talking about problems in the spiritual community. And I also have a pre-recorded video with Lisa Romano. That was one of the many topics we talked about, with spiritual bypass. So the statement of "we are all one," unless you disagree with me. You can see that in spiritual teachers, and no matter what side of the aisle they are, or what country they're coming from, or what their belief system is, you hear the "we're all one, but I'm a little more evolved than you," or "we're all one," or "I know a little bit more." And so what is the answer to that? I like to propose how I have found an answer to that dilemma. We are all one when we're in action, helping one another, and we don't care what someone's belief system is. So a lot of this information that's filtered to us from other people, from the media, from online sources, from books, from podcasts, blah, 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 wherever you get your information, sometimes it's just a lot of information that doesn't connect to higher source, to deeper wisdom, that 50 years from now it'll be valid and kind of silly. Like if you look at the McCarthy era, people were adamant about certain things, and then we kind of look back and we're like, wow, that's weird, and we might do the same thing with our time, and we might evolve way past this. So it's important to realize that the truth is not what your culture is saying. So no matter what side you're on, if you're not on the higher side, then you're not gaining the actual truth. And I think that's important to remember. So I know that when I've been in action as a professor, and I've helped someone who I vehemently disagree with on a political level, but I've helped this person who is traumatized. And then we have more of a relationship and an emotional understanding and a respect for one another. That opens a door. And I think that true love and that true service to humanity is how you not bypass, but how you jump over the fighting. That if you're in motion helping, then there isn't time to fight. And is education important, and is learning and growth important? Certainly. Is opening your mind important? Is being exposed to other cultures and working with other people and getting outside of your bubble? Hell yes. I mean, that's one of the benefits of college that I love, is seeing people from all over the world grow to appreciate one another and understand one another, and really respect one another. And I think that's important. And so does college give you that sense of we're all one? It moves you, it moves the bar a little bit more. Oh, the puppies are having dreams right now. So that's one thought. So here's another part of her post: your reality. Oh, yeah. What you seek is seeking you. No, those of us who are highly traumatized, we're never seeking this. And to say that it's a soul contract in all cases is ridiculous. And, you have to look at the fact that 15, 16, 20-year-olds, young people in general, don't quite understand boundaries. They don't quite understand defense, many of them. They're more easily victimized by people who are looking to victimize younger people. So when you discredit that and just say it's a soul contract, it just isn't in every case. No, we live in a culture and a society where the environment has an effect on us. And that's where I say, yes, manifestation is great. And yes, working in the direction of your dreams is amazing. And yes, all of this spiritual work is important, but you can't deny that we live in a certain time period. There's a great essay by Virginia Woolf, and she talks about, well, what if a woman was born with the genius of Shakespeare in his time? Would she have been a great playwright? No, she would have been laughed at if she tried to go into theater. She probably would have been knocked up by one of the production crew. She would have had to go into prostitution, and been laughed at. She couldn't have been Shakespeare because society did not allow that. So that was, there was too much sexism, too much ideas of a woman's role that she could not possibly break through that in that time period. So you can't deny the culture and say that, oh, everything's fine, when it isn't. If you haven't walked in a woman's shoes and you're a man, then you have to listen and understand like what it is like. I think that's important. And the same thing, women have to listen to men's experiences, but we don't speak to men's experiences, and men don't speak to women's experience. You're not an expert on that because if you haven't walked it, if you haven't lived it, then you have to listen to it. So I think that's where a lot of people get offended, is when, one race describes what it's like to be another race. No, step back and listen, just have a lot of friends of that race that you have ideas about. Really listen. And that's been one of the joys of being a community college professor, as I've read essay after essay, personal stuff from people from all walks of life and all around the world. And it has been a pleasure to understand people. And also reading memoirs helps. So if you're not a teacher, how do you do this? Well, yeah, you listen to people who are good at describing their experience and can put you in their shoes, and you can walk a mile in their experience without an agenda. So that's why storytelling is so important. Maybe every storyteller has a little bit of an agenda, but still, they're just trying to get you to see the world through their eyes and have empathy. Because what's the worst thing about all of this? No matter who you are and if you've suffered trauma, do you just sit with yourself? Is that how you heal it? What if you have no empathy, no community, no connection, no family, nothing? What if, are you just going to heal yourself alone? Yes, perhaps you can. Like the near-death experience shows us that, that love of God and our angels and our own connection can be deeply healing, but we also need community, and we need empathy from other people, and we need to be understood and valued. And that's not wrong of anyone to want that or to seek that. That connection is important to health and to mental health. And so finding it and finding safe connection is vital. So just as vital as the spiritual connection. And so I think that's overlooked sometimes. It's one of the things that I've missed about teaching online is that community and that connection that happened in the classroom. So there's a lot to say about Brooke Grove's post, and we didn't really talk about this per se in our interview, but one other thing that she said is, you know, one thing about the spiritual community that we hear a lot about is the divine masculine and divine feminine. And I'm going to ask in the live sessions, Aaron Abka, a lot more about his thoughts on this. And Criselda weighed in. We talked about that, Criselda Pacheco, in the pre-recorded section. And she has a statement that women have been weaponized. We are weaponized to sell things, used against one another, used for men's purposes. If you look at, you know, the industry of Hollywood, for instance, then objectification just runs amok. And why is objectification wrong? You know, like that's a question maybe you can answer below in the comments and kind of enlighten people who don't know why, because maybe they just watch a lot of comedy, a lot of movies, and a lot of what culture gives them, and they see, well, that's just what people do. They objectify women based on their looks, body parts, and why does it hurt women who are evolving and who are spiritual and who are sensitive, or even if they're not spiritual and they're just sensitive? It hurts because we're all so much more than that. We are our potential, we are our soul, we are our heart, we are our dreams. We're made up of everything that we are, just as men are, and we want to be sovereign. And that's the main thing is, how do you be sovereign in a society where you are objectified? How do you have your voice taken seriously? How do you have your life taken seriously when you are dialed down to a few parts? And this happens in relationships, and it happens in mass in society. So, you know, and I've worked in education for so long, and I've watched young men listen to people like Dr. Robert Jensen, who talks a lot about this and you know, what pornography has done to society. And I've been like pleased and happy at the innocence of young men who raise their hands and say, so how do I not objectify my friend? I want to just care about her as a person, but I have all these thoughts and images running through my head. And, you know, he answers these questions honestly. And I've heard some men say, well, I look at every woman as my sister. And, you know, other men say, well, I think, what would I want my daughter to experience? And, you know, when you look at someone who you're close to, and then you think of all women that way, that helps. There's got to be a way for that to change so that young women, and I teach many in community colleges, aren't just terrified to enter the world. Because I think the onslaught of sexuality and pornography terrifies some young women. They don't even want to date. They don't even want to be out there. So basically, you have the choice of kind of hardening yourself and accepting it because you want to experience life. And I'm talking more to heterosexual relationships because that's more my experience, but you know, it affects everyone in a variety of ways. But there are, from my experience, women who come and talk to me who just say, I'm terrified of the world. That's all I can tell you. You know, I just go home, even before the pandemic, I just go home and hide and study because I just don't want to face that energy. And if that's how women are feeling, then men are also feeling more isolated because women are isolating themselves. Some are, and then some are hardening themselves just to experience life. So what is the answer? I think it's just, again, that higher perspective. What does God want, you know, for lack of a better term, and not in this biblical way But what is the higher perspective? It's individual for everyone, just as healing is individual for everyone. So is the answer to this question. So is it gradual healing? Is it laughing at yourself at times? Is it understanding one another in different ways? What is the healing? So that is something that I keep working through and thinking about, but I think it is connecting to our innocence and connecting to our hearts and connecting to our soul journey and really connecting to who we are inside, not just who we are outside. And that's the greater healing, that when I'm in classrooms, I connect to the soul of my students and I want their journey to be great and to be wonderful. And that's what I saw on that higher plane during my near-death experiences. I wasn't judged, I didn't even see the bodies. I saw lights. I either saw that their light was on or their light was off. And if their light was off, then they had a lot of fear, anger, depression, or, a lot that is pushing down on them and not allowing them to connect to their passion for life. And I'm not even saying that they have to connect spiritually. Sometimes it can just be a profession and moving forward that helps someone turn on their light and move forward. So intellect can be, another way to connect. And that can be a beautiful experience. So not everyone is driven by the mind. I happen to be very much in my mind. And so thinking is one of my strengths. It's not everyone's strength. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean that in a, there are doers in the world, and that's great, people who do a whole lot more, but I'm very much in the realm of thought, and that's why speaking and writing and teaching and working with ideas is very much my realm. It's not everybody's realm, though, and sometimes I wish I was more of a person who was just out there making things happen. But I make some things happen, but I'm more apt to think about things for a long time. So we all have our strengths, we all have our gifts, and that is just what we learn to evolve with, is accept ourselves. So we accept ourselves and accept others. Now, one more thing. What is the deeper healing for the division in society? I've mentioned the higher perspective many times, but I really just want to channel a message right here. And the higher perspective is love yourself through the difficulty of encountering people who trigger you. So it isn't up to you to fix them. It isn't up to you to even fix society. Sometimes you just take care of your own heart and you just go, I've experienced a lot and this moment is triggering me. When you're able to speak to it from a calm perspective, you're changing the world, because your words do matter and your words do enlighten people and your words do wake people up if they can be heard at that deeper level. So that higher perspective sometimes speaks in parables. It doesn't always speak directly. Sometimes it simply comes through in a way that is peaceful, and it adds a different energy to a situation. It adds that energy of heaven. So even when you are certain that you're right, that you're, quote, more evolved than someone who is attacking you, just give yourself love and don't fall into the trap of arguing, because arguing is not going to necessarily alleviate anything. Sometimes there are moments when you can teach something from a really deeply rational perspective and just leave it out there and say no more. Other times it isn't accepted, and that's fine, so you just simply leave it. But most of all, when you're kind to others and when you help them in various ways in life, then this world begins to change. So many times near-death experiencers have come back and said, I wish I'd spent more quality time with my loved ones. I wish I had been kinder to everyone around me. I wish I had not been irritated. I wish I had not been depressed. I wish I had just turned on my light, lived my best life every day, and really been there for other people and been there for myself. So consider that, and consider simpler ways of looking at division and simpler ways of bringing peace and harmony and a new earth into being. And I would love it if you would tune in just a short while at 7:40 and listen to Ingrid Honkala's wisdom. And I would also love it if you would sign up for the summit so you can get reminders. And if you would like to purchase all the pre-recorded videos through July 4th, there is a coupon code to get 40% off. And after that, the price just stays because we're moving on into July and the summit is just around the corner. But thank you so much for tuning in to my channel, and may you be blessed always.